Hi, this is Stacey Hernandez with the Best You College Admissions Consulting, the best college for the best you. I'm here today interviewing Nick Dietrich. He is the Assistant Director of New Student and Transition Services for Colorado School of Mines. And I'm going to ask Nick to talk a little bit more about his background. We're really here to talk more about the first year experience on college campuses and really about orientation and that introduction for students for college. But I'm going to allow Nick to start with his background because it's actually awesome and it's so helpful for you to know where he's coming from when I interview him. So Nick, tell us more about your professional background and everything.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stacey. So again, my name is Nick Dietrich, and I work at the Colorado School of Mines. I would say that my background is interesting. I didn't know that I wanted to go into student affairs initially. I was a first-generation college student and had the opportunity to go to a really awesome, small, private liberal arts university in Tacoma, Washington, the University of Puget Sound. And, you know, my journey there was really interesting and up and down. Initially, I didn't love it. I missed Colorado. I missed my family. But it was really because of student affairs professionals that stepped in and helped out and really took me under their wing that I really began to flourish at my undergrad. And really also how I learned about the profession of helping students navigate their college experience outside of the classroom. And so through that, I kind of got involved in orientation and admissions visit programs at undergrad, and really found that I loved and had a passion for helping other students adjust. And so I went to graduate school, which was an interesting process. I chose a school that didn't require the GRE because I was not really good at it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I wasn't super good at test taking. And so I applied to a couple of institutions, but ended up going to Seattle University just up the road for my undergrad, where I got my master's in education in student development administration. A wonderful experience, a wonderful program, really dove in deep into the theory, but also theory to practice, really helped me understand how do students work, how can we support them, what are the different challenges that different student populations experience, and how can we be cognizant of those, but also steadfast in our approach to ensuring that students are successful no matter where they are in their journey in college. And so what a really cool experience for me during those 2 years. Just fell in love with the profession, fell in love with what I was doing. I worked out of grad school. I worked full-time for 4 years at Washington University in St. Louis. And there I worked in residence life. So I lived on campus, which is a really interesting position, right? You're a full-time person, you live physically on campus with the students that you work with. And I loved those 4 years. I think I spent 2 years in a kind of apartment style community, and then I spent 2 years in our residential college model. And so throughout my time there, I had a chance to work with all different types of students, all different years, incoming first years, seniors who are ready to graduate. And so really understanding the holistic college experience from a residential life perspective, which was awesome. But I had always really loved orientation too. And I was able to do some orientation work at WashU, working with my first years, obviously partnering with the first year center on campus to really help with their adjustment into college, and creating programming in the residence halls to ensure that the students who are new to college were learning, felt connected, felt at home, felt safe, all those things. And so I loved that piece of my job. But I was looking for orientation work solely. And so from there, spent 3 years at James Madison in Virginia, where big public school, lots of incoming students and transfer students as well, and worked there in orientation programming. And so my sole responsibility was to plan the logistics of our one-day programs in the summer. And then we had a 6-day welcome week that happened in August, all with the primary goal of ensuring that students understood resources, felt acclimated to campus, knew other people, knew their students and student staff and faculty and staff as well, and began to really feel like it was a place that they could call home, away from their other home. And so spent 3 years there, loved that, but was looking forward to sort of coming back closer to my family, which is in Colorado. And so last April, took the leap and came back to Colorado and joined the Colorado School of Mines community in a relatively new office. The office I work in now, Colorado School of Mines, has only been around for a few years. And so it's been really cool to be part of creatively thinking about how we want to expand and grow as an office. What are some things that we're doing really good that we can, continue to do? What are some things that we need to do better? It's been really nice to bring my ideas into a place that's appreciative of that and wants to grow and wants to evolve. And so it's been a really great first year almost for me there. And I'm really looking forward to expanding and learning and growing as I continue to be there.
That's so awesome. What a great opportunity. What a great opportunity. And I remember being in higher education, and the jobs I loved and thrived the most in were the ones where I had a creative outlet, where I could design new programs, develop new opportunities. That is just like, I mean, and that's hard at a lot of jobs, to find.
Yes.
So that's awesome. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much I really appreciate your background. I actually, side note, want to interview on a couple more things down the road that I have like big ideas for that I just think families are ready to hear. So anyways, so tell us more about what the purpose of orientation is. Explain that. So a student deposits at a school, right? They enroll, boom, what happens next?
Yep.
So can you start there and then go into purpose of orientation?
Absolutely. So I do think every school is a little different, but I do think that, yes, once a student has decided, yes, I'm going to go to this school and I want to pay my deposit, typically that is when you sometimes see the transition from more admissions involving with the student to more of a first year center, orientation office, new student programs and family programs office kind of taking over from there. I think some schools do it together and they continue that relationship kind of moving forward with the student. But admissions, as you know, is like getting the student to come, really enjoy their experience, feel like they can belong there, and then pay their deposit, and they say, yes, I'm going to go to this school. From there, typically, we then start communication with students and say, welcome to this campus. We're so excited that you are here. Here are some important things you need to be mindful of as you transition into school. And most times, there's often like checklists, or there are to-do items that schools will send out. That say like, in May, you should do this. In June, you should do this. In July, you should be doing this and thinking about this. And so I think oftentimes orientation is the collecting of all the different ideas and materials that students need to know and kind of act as like the one-stop shop for families and students. Awesome. So once orientation kind of understands who's coming to that school, typically schools do oftentimes a one-day program in the summer, or they might have a 2-day program where students come on campus and spend the night, and then I'll kind of have 2 full days on campus. A lot of schools will do programming for families as well, families and guests, because that's a pivotal component to the success of a student in college, is having the support network, both on campus, but also hopefully from people at home, guardians, parents, guests, family members that are really supportive of the student, hopefully. And so kind of depending on the school and the type of program, I think new students and their families can expect some type of orientation, right? A lot of schools will do maybe not anything until maybe a whole week in August, where they come on campus and they move in, and then it starts a whole journey for a few days, and then they start school. So every school is a little bit different. But I would say that in general, every school who does orientation for incoming students and their family members and guests has the goal of ensuring a smooth transition into the community, where students and their family members are able to understand and connect to resources. They are able to build connection with other new students and student leaders on campus and faculty and staff. And they learn the culture and the traditions of that specific school. I think holistically, those are like the overarching goals of an orientation program, to ensure that students know their resources and that they feel like they could ask for help and know who to ask for help as they're transitioning into this institution, that they feel like they have a sense of cohesion and connection to the institution, and that they feel like they belong there, and that they have community there that will support them in the ups and downs of the navigation process, which we know is very challenging. And that they feel like they have a sense of pride in being at the institution and feeling like they can be successful. So those are the things that come to mind holistically about what is the purpose of orientation. I think it's those 3 big overarching things.
Wow. So, so explain then, you were just talking about connecting to resources. Now, I know you can talk specifically about your institutions. I know there's some general principles that are the same that you're bringing up. So I'm hoping that you can probably apply this to both as well, this question, but explain in more detail, like what are those opportunities that students are connected to? What are the resources students are connected to during orientation programs?
That's a great question. There's a lot. So I think it can be a little bit overwhelming as well. I think sometimes people leave feeling like, oh my gosh, I learned so much at orientation and I need to digest it. I need to understand what it all means, but I'm kind of an overdrive or overload. And that's, I think, a real thing that I try to be cognizant of when we're delivering information to students and their families. But I do think that for us, I think about what's the most important thing they need to know right at that moment. Like some things students will learn when they get on campus and they move in, and some things they need to know in the summertime when they come to our orientation program, because that actually impacts how they set up financial aid, how they set up meal plans, how they set up their residence life application, if that's applicable for the institution. And so we focus really on what are the key things they need to know right at that moment. And so, as you probably understand and know, financial aid has dates and deadlines that are applicable that have to be done by a certain time in the summertime for students to be able to get financial aid packages to cover tuition. And so really making sure that family members and students both know what are the important dates and deadlines of financial aid, and how does that work, and how do you set up your bill in order to pay the financial aid. And so we cover a lot of those details for families and guests, but also for students to know, because students are the ones that actually control their account because of FERPA. And so how do we teach families and also students their rights in making sure that if they want their parents to be involved or have access to certain things, the students actually have to authorize that, which a lot of times families are like, well, that's not fair. I'm paying the bill, or I'm doing all the work, which is true, but by law, students actually control their records. And so same way with grades too, right? So ensuring that, as your student gets their midterms, it gets their final grades for their first semester, this is no longer high school where you can actually see those grades. They control them, and they unless they authorize you to have access, you will not have access. And so I think it's partly having those conversations with families too, to set up the expectations of what does it look like to support your student from afar. How do you support your student? How do you know what's going on? How do you still care for them? And also recognizing that at the same time, your role in their life is going to look a little different. And so it's setting up those expectations early on so that there's less of that potentially problematic or frustration down the road when these things start to come into play. So those are some of the topics that we cover in orientation for sure. I think it's also really important that families and students hear from administration. They hear from the president, they hear from the provost, they hear from the vice president of student affairs, that they get those sort of welcoming messages early on. And so we always start the day with making sure that those key players in our institution are up in front of the students, welcoming them and their families, talking about what they can expect for the day, but also what they can expect to be as a student there. And that they're visible and approachable, and so that they really know that Mines or any other place, is going to be a place that they feel supported from the top down. And so we always include those people into the day. But we also talk about residence life a lot, because residence life, at least particularly where I have worked in the past, at least first year students have to live on campus. There are a few, times when that is not applicable, but like for the most part, they're going to live on campus. And so what are the important things they need to know about moving in? Is there is there a residence life application they have to fill out by a certain date? How do they pick their roommates? Is it optional? Is it randomized? What do they need to move in? What can they bring and what they cannot bring when they move in? And so teaching them those things in the summertime helps them prepare for that successful move-in process in the fall, because move-in day is very hectic. There's a lot of emotions. It's a very big logistical process. And so how can we set them up in advance to know expectations, what they can and cannot do and bring, so that they are taking care of the application, taking care of the whole roommate process in the summertime after they have come to our program before they come in August. So that's a big key player in the day as well. And then there are also opportunities where we really believe it's pivotal for students to see other students and to meet other students as well. And so we have a part of the day where a student leader will take about a group of, 15 to 20 new students into small groups, and have discussions where they talk about expectations about campus. They talk about what's it like to be a student. They do some community building and some team sharing, and just as a chance for other students to see other students, and also have a connection to one person on campus as in their leader that they can go to the rest of the summer via email, or that when they walk on campus in August, they recognize, oh, that was my launch leader, and I know that person, and I can go up and ask them questions. We know that a sense of cohesion is so critical for student success, especially in their first year. Feeling like they have somebody else to go to, somebody else there's a familiar face that they can go up and have lunch with, or grab coffee with, or just stop and talk with as they're walking to class, can make or break a student's experience. And so we try to establish those social cohesion and connection opportunities at orientation as well, because we know that's a starting point that then can build and build and build and build. So that's a part of the day as well. And then I'll just touch on one more thing that we do typically, is a resource fair, which I think is very common around different college campuses. And so we'll get together, 15 to 20 to 30 different departments on campus, and put them all together in one location where families and students are able to walk around, grab swag, grab resources, talk to different offices about different opportunities on campus. And I think I try to be strategic in who I bring to that, because I think about what are the offices that really need to get in front of students, or vice versa, at this point in the summer. And so it's a lot of like businesses on campus, so financial aid, the Bursar's office, which is how they pay their bill. We bring in, campus safety. We bring in the libraries, all sorts of key constituents that will impact the student's experience and that we want them to know about, and feel like they have knowledge of as they're coming into campus.
What about like counseling center, academic support, those kind of?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
There's a whole session that we do on mental health, and so counseling center, health center, student health insurance program. That's really specific to mines, but yes, we absolutely do that. We want to ensure that students know of their resources on campus, particularly if they're struggling with anxiety or adjustment or homesickness or depression. Mental health is very big on college campus right now. I mean, a lot of our students are experiencing mental health, and that we need to get to the point when we're able to talk about it openly with our students. And so we do that, and we let them know, like, here are the resources, and here's what you get to as a student here. So please utilize these resources when you come. So absolutely, mental health, we talk about that. And then I guess the last big piece too is, what can students expect about advising in course enrollment? Because that is different at every school I've worked at, for sure. But a lot of schools are, sometimes new students are enrolling themselves into their first semester classes. Sometimes it's done for them. And how does the advisor relationship in that process look like and work? Who is their advisor? Is it a general advisor? Is it somebody in their major? And so we talk through all of that process too, and how it's going to work for them, particularly at the school that I'm at right now. It's very specific and it's very particular because they have a very set curriculum that every new student goes into. And so we have a whole session on how is your advising and course enrollment going to look like? What can you expect? Who is your advisor? How do you get a hold of them? How do you know them? How do you reach out to them? So those are that's a lot of different pieces,
as
you can imagine. But I really think that we want to give the message that there's support, that there are students that care about their success, faculty and staff care about their success, administration cares about their success, and we really want them to feel like they made the best decision, the right decision, and that they are going to be taken care of, and have a chance to find their community when they come to campus.
Nice. And I'm assuming with the COVID-19 pandemic, it's just this particular programming is moving online.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
So pretty much same connection, same kind of welcome speeches, same kind of, opportunities. It's just online. Great.
Yeah, it's moving online. And that was a decision that was just made a few weeks ago, but it has been since then, as you can imagine, it is like planning, thinking, strategizing. How can we still provide a meaningful experience for our students and their guests and their family members when they can't physically come to campus? Because that is a huge difference. I mean, some of these students are going to be depositing to schools, experiencing online orientation, and will set foot on campus hopefully in August without ever seeing potentially campus
Yeah.
before, which is a very different experience.
Yes.
And so we have a kind of established a 2-phased model approach to our orientation this summer for our launch program, which was the 1-day orientation. So we have kind of taken on a hybrid approach where we'll have, we still will have our 8 orientation dates that we had picked a long time ago to happen in the summer. But on those dates, it's going to consist of some live forums, which are going to be sort of like what we're doing right now, right? Where families and guests will log on to the webinar, and they will hear those. There's basically going to be 3 different live forum sessions, and in each session, there's 2 to 3 offices that will talk. And they'll share screens, and they'll give presentations, and they'll be able to answer questions in real time and live time, and allowing our students and their families to watch, ask questions, get feedback right away. So that's one part of the orientation that they'll experience. And so for us, that's things like financial aid, the bursar, registrar's office, the advising office, residence life, health center, counseling center, and the student health insurance program. Those are going to be the live forums that we'll have. But then in addition, we're going to have student-to-student Zoom chats. So all of our launch leaders will get on to Zoom from 1 to 2 o'clock on Mountain Standard Time on those days. And then we'll break them out into breakout rooms. As you probably are familiar, the technology allows us to take a bunch of students and then break them out into breakout rooms. And then they'll be led in discussions by a launch leader in each of those rooms. So they'll still get the small group experience. They'll still get the chance to meet other new students, to talk to other new students, to see other new students, and then to really still meet a launch leader as part of that day. Because we feel, again, it's very important that they hear the student experience, and they can ask questions that they may not want to ask a professional or a staff member, but they'll probably be okay asking a student, right? And so that's part of the day. And then I'm also on the side creating an online orientation module experience that's going to be online platform based, so that if students and family members don't have the opportunity to watch the live forums or choose not to, they still can go on to this website that I'm creating through Canvas, which is an online course platform. And every new student will be enrolled into this orientation course, and they will be able to still click on links and watch videos and learn about all the things that really are important for them to learn about at this point in the process. So it's kind of that process will be really on their own time, at their own pace, as they need to kind of work their way through the different modules. It'll really be a good supplement for the live forums that we'll be providing on each of the orientation days.
Wow, that's awesome. Any final tips for families, for students or parents, or anyone within the family, that is just to get them prepared for this transition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I had to give any advice, a couple of things come to mind. One is to stay invested in the process. It's not the same process as you probably hoped it would have been, but I can assure you that as professionals on the other side, we are trying our best to provide resources, to answer questions, to be available. And so I think stay invested in the process and ask questions. And don't be afraid to email, to reach out. We are all here for the sole purpose of ensuring that our students are successful and it can transition well. And so we are working still. We are here to support, and we want to support. That's our job. And we will still do it remotely, even though we're not on campus. I'd also say to use the available resources. It can be really overwhelming. There is a lot of different resources available to students and their family members on a college campus. And I think sometimes it's just hard to know where to start.
Yeah.
So I think make that initial email, reach out to anybody that you know of or that you can find on a campus website, and they will get you connected to the right people. Absolutely. There's so many resources. I think the hard part is that students, A, don't think they need them, or B, have a hard time knowing where they are. And so then they're just often underutilized. But there are so many things out there. on one particular campus, obviously there's counseling sessions, but there's also peer educators who talk about how to, navigate stress better and how to study better. We also have our Center for Academic Services and Advising, which does coaching and tutoring and has office hours. And there's just so many things on a campus that students and their family members can utilize. So just don't be afraid to use them, and especially don't be afraid to ask for help when you know you need it. That's why we are here as professionals, to ensure your success as students. And so I would say those things: stay invested, ask questions, use resources, and ask for help. I think are things to be mindful of as you navigate this process.
Thank you, Nick, so much. I really appreciate it. This is such a valuable video for our families. So thank you. Again, this is Stacy Hernandez with the Best U College Admissions Consulting. And if you have more questions, you can see us at thebestview.net.